Alright, in this video I'm going to give you some tips as to how to create a basic and simple animation using Adobe Photoshop. It's quite an interesting and fun thing, and it's relatively easy to do once you know the basics of it. It involves the use of the layers panel, which I'm going to drag out so that I have them here and we can refer to them. It also relies on the use of the motion panel, or actually the motion environment. So I'm going to change, I have this set to essentials right now. I'm going to change it to motion. And what happens is when I do that, it doesn't mess with my layers, but what it does is invariably it opens up the timeline down here. The timeline is what we're going to use to create our animation. And just so that you understand, this animation is somewhat similar to Adobe Flash, or what's the other one called? Can't think of the name of it right now. The other animation program by Adobe, Animate. Now also, if you want, you can come here and in your windows where all of your panels are, if this timeline doesn't come up, you can find your timeline right there as well. So you can open up the timeline. So the only other thing that you have to do to really get this thing ready to go here is right here you have to click on Create Video Timeline. So now that we've created a video timeline, we're basically ready to go. We have our layer here and we have our layer reading over here. So how this works essentially is we create layers, and each one of these layers is what we're going, the content I should say on each one of these layers is what we're going to use to make our animation. So what I recommend that you do if you're new to this is to just practice with this very basic approach that I'm doing here to become familiar with the process. Once you get into that basic familiar process, you can begin to get more creative with it. This video is not intended to be overly creative. This is a very basic, just a look at the process, how it works, so that you can become familiar with it. Okay, so I have my layer 0 here, which I'm going to rename that to background. Where's my bees? I can't see anything on my screen here. Hold on, let me turn my light on. There we go. Okay. Background. Okay, so I have a background layer. And notice that, obviously, when the background is changed up here, it begins to read down here as well. Oh, there's also, by the way, an audio track, which means essentially, if you wanted to in a more advanced way, you could drop in an audio track as a background audio. We're not going to do that in this because I don't have an audio ready to go. But I just wanted to point out to you, you could add an audio track to this. So if you wanted to put sound behind your animated process, you can do that very easily by bringing in the right kind of file, drop it in there, and set it up to sync with your audio or with your video. All right, so what I'm going to do to demonstrate this is I'm just going to create a few lines of text. So the first one's to say animation. Okay, animation. And I'm going to drag that over and place it right about there. And notice that a layer is made, animation. Notice that it's stacking up right now. Basically, that's the way this thing works out. Now I'm going to create another layer. Animation in. Oops. Animation in Adobe. Move it over to about there. Again, it's stacking up. That's the way this thing generally works at this point. And then I'm going to create another layer. And I'm going to type in Photoshop. And I might even put is. And then let's move that over to about there. Okay. And then I'm going to create one more line. Whoops, I didn't get my space. Easy and fun. Now, again, I know this is extremely stupid, but the bottom line is, we're trying to I'm trying to give you an idea of how this works. So the other thing you might want to do here is you might want to click on, I hold the shift key down and click on all those layers. And what I might want to do is go to let's go to window, let's go to align, if I can get the align panel out here. Where's my align? I want to distribute them. There we go, I think that's it. There we go, okay. I just wanted to distribute them kind of right. So basically, what's going to happen in my animation ultimately is that I'm going to have these words appear in line, okay? Right now, if I drag my timeline back and forth, nothing happens because they're all basically in the same position and there's no animation to it. So what I want to do ultimately is I want to drag this thing out a little bit. I'm going to make this thing a little bit bigger. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by, that's the wrong layer, start by dragging this one over, and then this one over, and then this one over, and then this one over. And you'll see that as we do this, my animation will start to play. But it plays pretty dumb, actually. So what I'm going to do with this is, I have to open this up a little bit more because I can't see what I'm doing here at this point. Let me find the splitter. It's right there. I got to split it just a little bit more. There we go. Jumpy splitter today. All right, so let's go to this background layer. And I'm going to take this background layer and I'm going to stretch that background layer so that it covers all of these steps. Now, if I play my animation, okay, I'm just going to play this. Watch what happens. Wait for it. There's an animation. Now, it's pretty bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back to the beginning and I'm going to adjust this a little bit. I'm going to bring this back and I'm going to set this up to where it's much shorter time span. And in fact, what I'm going to do is, because I would like this to come on and say animation in Adobe Photoshop is easy and fun. And I want the whole thing to play through so that this you can see through the whole animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrub this over until it reaches the end here. Then I'm going to bring this guy back in and I'm going to make it a shorter run, probably like that. And I'm going to drag that all the way out to that point, right, like that. And I think I probably have to move that in just a, well, maybe that's right. Let's try it this way. It can't hurt. And then this guy is going to move over, whoops, up, Control Z. I grabbed it the wrong way. I'm going to drag this back to about here. And I'm going to stretch this out until I reach, these are all going to the end of the span is really what it is. The total span is based on my background. That's my total span right there, okay? And then of course I'm going to move this back over here and I'm going to stretch that span out. So now what I have is I have a background that covers the entire length of my animation, okay? And then I have this which says animation comes on at that point and it stays until the end. Then it says in Adobe comes on at that point and stays till the end. And then of course Photoshop comes on and it stays to that point. And then easy and fun. Okay? So let's play this and let's see what we get. Animation in Adobe. Photoshop is easy and fun. And then of course it'll play until I reach the end of my span, which I'm going to stop because it's very long. That's basically it. I mean, I don't need to explain any more than what you see right there. This whole thing has to do with the use of layers, and really as far as it goes in this particular context, the only thing that you'd have to keep in mind is that, you know, these layers can be moved in any direction that they want because they're set to begin at a certain point. But I generally think in terms of the stacking order of layers. So obviously the background is going to be the background layer, and you can make that any color you want. You could do anything you want. You could even put a picture back there if you want, pretty much anything you want. The text can be any text you want. It doesn't have to be this text. It can be any color. I'm not showing you everything that you can do with this. Really what I'm just trying to do is give you a basic idea of how the layers panel relates to the layer stacking in the timeline, and how the placement of your elements within the time environment will determine how your animation works. That's basically it. Try this, see if it works for you. I know it will. And if you grasp this basic concept, you are on your way to being able to deal with animation in Adobe Photoshop. Have fun and learn.